My world shattered with a subject line. Irreconcilable differences. Let's move on. It was an email, a goddamn email, while I was deep in a code review for our flagship cloud platform. The culmination of 2 years of my life as a lead software architect. I'm Michael, 44 years old. My wife, Jessica, soon to be ex-wife apparently, after 15 years, decided this was how you end a marriage. The body of the email was brief. She'd filed, the joint accounts were being managed, and her life coach, Alex, was helping her transition into our guest house. Our guest house. I read it, blinked, then read it again. The server logs in front of me suddenly seemed utterly meaningless. I typed a single word reply, acknowledged. Then I turned back to the complex architecture diagram on my secondary monitor and forced myself to trace data flows. My team lead, Sarah, glanced over. Everything okay, Mike? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just a spam email, Sarah. Unusual one. I mumbled, not meeting her eyes. She frowned but went back to her own work. Software architects, we deal in logic, in systems. Emotional outbursts are inefficient code. I stayed an extra 2 hours methodically documenting the new API endpoints, my mind a frozen landscape. The email wasn't a total shock, not if I was honest. The last year had been different. Jessica, once a vibrant marketing manager, had quit her job to become a lifestyle influencer, a path encouraged by this Alex character she'd met at some self-improvement seminar. The late night strategy sessions with him, the sudden obsession with manifesting abundance, her secretive phone calls. Her laptop, once open on the kitchen counter, was now always password protected with a new, complex passphrase I didn't recognize, ironic, given my profession. I'd noticed, of course, my job involves spotting anomalies in complex systems. Human behavior isn't so different. I hadn't snooped, it's not my way. But I had taken precautions, driven by a deeply ingrained professional habit. As an architect of critical systems, I believe in backups and redundancy. Months ago, sensing a shift, I'd started meticulously archiving digital copies of all our financial statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, and tax returns onto an encrypted drive I kept in my office safe, a habit born from years of ensuring disaster recovery for petabytes of data. I'd also opened a separate personal account, diverting a small, consistent portion of my salary, an emergency fund. I'd initially told myself it was for a surprise anniversary trip, a ludicrous self-deception in retrospect. The night before I left for the annual developers conference in Austin 3 weeks ago, Jessica had given me a perfunctory hug. "Have a good trip," she'd said, already scrolling through her phone, probably checking her social media engagement. There was no warmth, no connection. It felt like a transaction. My gut, that internal anomaly detection system, had screamed warnings. I just hoped the system error was temporary, patchable. It wasn't. What she and Alex didn't understand was that my professional life was about designing resilient systems, systems that could withstand attacks and recover, and I was about to apply that same thinking to my life. I met Jessica at a tech mixer. I was a senior engineer then, full of ambition. She was in marketing for a startup, bright, funny, and refreshingly uninterested in debating the merits of different programming languages. We clicked. Married within a year. She'd always said she admired my focus, my intellect. Her parents were academics. Mine ran a small hardware store. We bought a beautiful house in a quiet Bay Area suburb in 2012, using a significant chunk of my stock options from my previous company as a down payment. I insisted her name was on the deed, equal partners. That's how a marriage should function. Like a well-designed distributed system, shared load, mutual reliance. My father passed away a few years into our marriage, a sudden heart attack. My mother 2 years later from cancer. Their modest estate, combined with some successful personal investments I'd managed using the analytical skills honed in my career, allowed us to pay off the mortgage and build a substantial nest egg. Jessica used to joke that my algorithmic brain made me a natural investor. The first 7, maybe 10 years were good, really good. But as my career advanced, the demands grew. Longer hours, more responsibility designing systems that powered millions of transactions. Jessica's career, meanwhile, plateaued. She'd switch jobs every couple of years, always seeking something more fulfilling. The influencer gig was the latest. "Mike, you just don't get it," she'd say when I questioned the time and money poured into it, often at Alex's suggestion. "This is about building a brand, creating a legacy." My legacy was in the code, in the systems that worked silently, efficiently. Hers was becoming a performance. About 2 years ago, the real changes began. She started complaining about our stifling suburban life. Said her friends were all traveling the world, living authentically. She started attending expensive spiritual retreats and investment workshops, hosted by Alex's nebulous organization. Her spending increased dramatically. Credit card statements, which I usually glanced at per our shared financial planning, started showing large, unexplained charges to vaguely named wellness centers and consultancy firms. When I'd ask, she'd get defensive. "It's my personal development, Mike. You're always so focused on the material." I'd suggested therapy. She laughed. "We don't need therapy, we need abundance." My habit of archiving our financials intensified then. My internal threat model was escalating from potential data corruption to active intrusion attempt. I am a systems architect. I anticipate failure points and build in mitigation strategies. A week after the email, a notification popped up from my banking app. A transfer $75,000 from our joint investment account to a new account I didn't recognize. I felt a cold dread, but my training kicked in. Don't panic. Analyze. I pulled up my encrypted archive. Cross-referenced the transaction. Then I logged into our main joint checking. Balance our emergency savings, nearly $250,000 carefully accumulated, gone. Transferred out in a series of transactions over the past month, the largest ones occurring while I was in Austin. My access to the investment account portal, which I'd set up with two-factor authentication tied to my phone, was suddenly denied. Invalid credentials. Sarah walked by my desk. "Mike, you're white as a sheet. What's going on?" This time, I didn't fob her off. Sarah wasn't just a colleague, she was a brilliant engineer and a discreet friend. "Jess is leaving me," I said, my voice flat, "and she's cleaned out the accounts. With her life coach Alex, I think." Sarah's eyes, usually analytical behind her glasses, showed genuine concern. "The snake oil salesman." "Mike, that's more than leaving. That's theft." She paused. "You backed up everything, right? Your usual data paranoia." I nodded then. "Encrypted." "Good," she said. "What's your first step?" That night, sleep was impossible. My mind raced, not with grief, but with problem solving. Jessica had mentioned wanting to diversify assets. A few months back, a phrase Alex undoubtedly fed her. I'd been resistant, preferring our established, transparent investment strategy. I remembered casually setting up online access to some of our older, smaller utility accounts that were still paper-based. Jessica wouldn't have thought twice about them. Using a VPN to mask my IP, I logged into our city utilities portal. Payment history. All normal. Then, the home alarm system. I still had master admin access from when I installed and configured its smart features. I pulled the activity logs. Arm, disarm, sensor triggers. The guest house sensor, rarely tripped, now showed constant activity. More disturbingly, I saw multiple logins to the alarm system's admin panel from an unfamiliar IP address over the past month. Not brute force, but successful logins. Someone had obtained the credentials. My credentials? How? Then it hit me, the new smart home hub Alex had gifted Jessica, which she'd insisted on integrating. It was a potential backdoor. I felt a chill. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was calculated. This was a system breach. My primary directive shifted: identify vulnerabilities, gather data, secure assets, neutralize threat. My first call wasn't to a divorce lawyer. It was to David Lee. David and I had met when his firm consulted for my company on a data breach incident. He was a cybercrime specialist, a former federal prosecutor who understood digital forensics better than anyone I knew. I laid out the situation, the email, the drained accounts, the suspicious alarm system access, the life coach. David listened, his voice calm, analytical. "Mike, this sounds like a premeditated financial decimation, possibly using undue influence. The alarm system logs and your archived financials are crucial. Send them over, encrypted, of course." He then asked, "Did Jessica ever ask you for specific passwords or access recently under any pretext?" I thought back. Yes. About 2 months ago, she'd said Alex needed to assess our digital security footprint as part of their wealth management strategy. She'd been vague about how he'd do it without direct access. I had foolishly, perhaps to appease her, or because I was distracted by a critical project deadline, demonstrated how I access certain non-critical home systems on my laptop while she was in the room, thinking she wouldn't grasp the technicals. She must have shoulder surfed, or worse, Alex had instructed her on how to capture my keystrokes using some innocuous-looking app on her phone. My professional pride stung. A software architect, potentially compromised by such a basic social engineering tactic. David's instructions were clear. Don't confront them. Don't change any passwords they might currently have access to yet. We need to see how they're operating. We need to establish a pattern. Over the next few days, working with David, the picture became horrifically clear. The large transfers from our investment account weren't just to a new bank account. They were then swiftly moved again, through a series of shell corporations, ending up in an offshore account linked to Alex Vance, his real name. David's PI dug him up. Vance had a history of similar schemes charming vulnerable individuals, isolating them, then siphoning their assets. Jessica was his latest mark. Or was she a willing accomplice? The 75,000 transfer had required voice authorization for transactions over 50K. Jessica must have made that call. My archived bank statements, when David's forensic accountant referenced them with information he subpoenaed, showed smaller, regular payments from Jessica to Vance over the last year, disguised as consulting fees. This was a long con. My grief was being rapidly replaced by a cold, hard anger, the kind that clarifies thought rather than clouds it. I wasn't just a jilted husband, I was the victim of a sophisticated fraud. And Jessica was, at best, a deeply complicit fool, at worst, a co-conspirator. My mindset shifted. I was no longer a victim reacting to a crisis. I was an architect designing a countermeasure. My goal, not revenge, but justice, and the recovery of what was stolen. My expertise was in identifying system exploits. Vance and Jessica had exploited a human system. Now I would exploit theirs. David and I formulated a plan. Vance was greedy. He had to be expecting more. The house was the biggest remaining asset, valued at nearly $3.5 million, fully paid off. He'd want that. They'll try to get you to sign a quitclaim deed or agree to a quick sale where the funds get routed through him, David theorized. We need to give them an opportunity to expose their hand further, in a way we can document unequivocally. My professional life had taught me that the best way to catch an error in a system is to let it run under controlled conditions and observe its behavior. I recalled Jessica mentioning, a few weeks before Austin, how Alex thought we should leverage the equity in the house for higher yield investments. At the time, I dismissed it. Now, it was a vital clue. David suggested a carefully worded email. I sent it to Jessica. Jess, I'm still processing everything. Regarding assets, perhaps Alex's idea about the house wasn't entirely off. If we're splitting, maybe a fast sale is best. I'm open to discussing. Mike, no accusation, just wary resignation. The bait was laid. 2 days later, Jessica replied, CCing Alex. Mike, I'm glad you're being sensible. Alex has a buyer who can close quickly, all cash. He can handle the paperwork. Let's meet to sign next week. David's team immediately researched the buyer. Unsurprisingly, it was another shell company linked to Vance. The trap was set. Now, to document the kill chain, David arranged for a forensic notary and a private investigator, posing as a paralegal, to be present at the signing, which we scheduled at a neutral Regus office space David's PI had discreetly wired for audio and video. The day of the meeting, I felt a strange calm. It was like deploying a critical patch after identifying a zero-day exploit. Jessica arrived with Alex, who was all smooth confidence. Jessica looked nervous, avoiding my gaze. Alex did most of the talking, explaining how the buyer was offering a fair market price for a quick, no-fuss sale, presenting documents that would essentially give him control of the proceeds. David's paralegal busily took notes and occasionally adjusted a pen, which I knew was a high-resolution recorder. The forensic notary reviewed the documents with deliberate slowness. At one point, Alex, impatient, said, "It's all standard. We just need Michael's signature here, here, and here to transfer title and direct the funds to our holding company for disbursement." I looked at Jessica. "Are you sure about this, Jess? All the proceeds to his holding company?" She faltered, looked at Alex. He gave her a reassuring nod. "It's for efficient processing, darling. To maximize your returns quickly." I picked up the pen. Then I accidentally knocked over my water bottle, a small one, drenching a section of the documents. "Oh, terribly sorry," I said, dabbing at them. "Perhaps we should get fresh copies. And while we're at it, Alex, could you just explain for the record, for my own peace of mind as I'm a bit overwhelmed, exactly how this holding company protects my share of the proceeds until they reach my personal account?" Alex, irritated by the delay but still trying to appear professional, launched into a convoluted explanation that David later said was a textbook example of fraudulent misrepresentation. He even explicitly stated that he would ensure Michael's half was wired within 24 hours of closing. It was all on tape. Once he was done, I said, "Actually, I think I'll have my lawyer review these one more time before signing. Just a formality." Alex's smile tightened. "That will only delay things, Michael. The buyer wants to close this week." "I understand," I said, "but given the circumstances." The meeting ended without my signature. As Jessica and Alex left, Alex shot me a look of pure venom. The mask had slipped. The recording captured everything: their intent, the proposed fraudulent transaction, Alex's admissions. It was irrefutable. The next morning, David, armed with my complete archive of financials, the alarm system logs showing Alex's remote access approving a pattern of unauthorized intrusion into my digital life, the PI's report on Vance, the recordings from the meeting, and a meticulously crafted affidavit from me, met with the white-collar crime division of the local DA's office and the state financial regulator. Given the evidence of wire fraud, mail fraud the buyer, documents were couriered, and conspiracy, an investigation was opened immediately. Within 48 hours, investigators executed a warrant at Alex Vance's office in the guest house. Accounts linked to Vance were frozen. Jessica, when confronted by investigators with the evidence of her complicity, the voice, authorized transfer, the payments to Vance, her presence and endorsement during the fraudulent signing attempt, crumbled. The investigators showed her evidence from Alex's seized devices that he was already grooming his next victim, using almost identical language and tactics. Her special connection with Alex was just a template he used. Her shock and dawning horror were, I was told, profound. It became clear that while Jessica was greedy and easily manipulated, Alex was the architect of the fraud. The legal fallout was swift. Alex Vance was charged with multiple counts of fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy. He faced similar charges in 2 other states. Jessica, to avoid prosecution, agreed to cooperate fully. She signed a divorce settlement that returned every recoverable cent of the liquid assets, relinquished all claims to the house, my pension, and future earnings, and provided a sworn confession detailing Alex's manipulation and her own willing participation in certain acts, which was sealed but available to the prosecution. The divorce was finalized in record time. Our house, the one we'd built a life in, felt tainted. I couldn't stay. 6 months later, with the legal proceedings against Vance well underway, I sold it. Agent Patel from the DA's office called me. Mr. Anderson, Vance pled guilty. Looking at significant prison time. Your meticulous records and the way you created that final recording opportunity were instrumental. He was targeting at least 3 other individuals in our county with the same fast cash home sale scheme. You stopped him. There was a pause. Jessica Evans received 2 years probation and community service, conditional on her continued cooperation in other ongoing investigations into Vance's network. I felt a sense of closure, but not triumph. Just a quiet finality, like closing out a deprecated software project. I bought a smaller place, a modern condo downtown with a great view and high-speed fiber essential. I threw myself back into my work, designing next-generation distributed systems. My focus and attention to detail, once vulnerabilities in my personal life, were assets in my professional one. Sarah often checked in. "Heard Vance is looking at 10 to 15, she said one day. Good. Some bugs need to be permanently quarantined. I started volunteering, mentoring young coders from underprivileged backgrounds, teaching them about system design and subtly about digital self-defense. About a year after the divorce, I received a letter. It was forwarded by David's office. The sender was an elderly woman whose retired husband had dementia. Alex Vance had been slowly siphoning their life savings before my case brought his operations crashing down. "Mr. Anderson," she wrote, "the district attorney told me your actions helped recover a portion of what that monster stole from us. You gave us back some peace of mind in these difficult years. Thank you for not just letting it go." I pinned that letter above my workstation. My counterattack hadn't just been about recovering my assets, it had inadvertently shielded others. My old life was a deprecated system, full of security holes and corrupted data. This new life, version 2.0, was built on a more secure foundation, with stricter protocols and a much clearer understanding of human and systemic vulnerabilities. It was quieter, more focused, and entirely my own. And sometimes, looking at that letter, I realized that even from a catastrophic system failure, something robust, something meaningful, could be rebuilt.